Welcome to JimJim's Reinvention Revolution podcast, the show that explores reinvention in the digital age as it relates to career, creativity, and technology. Stay tuned for interviews with professionals, entrepreneurs, and creatives that have reimagined success and are making a pivot. If you'd like to listen to the entire back catalog, visit JimJim'sReinventionRevolution.com for instant access. And now, here's your host, JimJim.
Okay, here we go. Hey, revolutionaries. Hey, JimJim here. It is 2023, so Happy New Year to everyone. Finally sitting down to record this kickoff episode, and I can't wait, actually, because this thing has been bubbling up in my mind over the last week or so here. Finally got back in town. I'm getting over my jet lag here, so I was out of town for a few days. Before we get into it, I'll let you know what's been happening. So I needed to escape to New Orleans. So I was down in New Orleans for the new year. I felt like I just needed to kind of rejuvenate myself. It was getting dark and cloudy here, Northeast Ohio, as it always does in the winter. And and I usually been kicking off my year in a different location just as a way to, as a sabbatical kind of. So I kind of go by myself, and it kind of just leaves me with my thoughts, and I think about the year, and I do some strategic planning. So thinking about my travels, thinking about things I might want to accomplish or topics I want to learn more about throughout the year. So I got to do that, and usually I try to record the podcast when I'm away, just because it's fun, and again, I'm more focused. But it didn't happen this time. So I was just having fun. I ended up actually connecting with a friend who lives down there, who I hadn't seen for a while since the pandemic and all that. So it was fun to hang out with her. And before we dig into what I have for you today, which is I want to dig into the topics of curiosity and observation. I want to give you first an observation of New Orleans that I discovered that I'm not sure. I've been down to New Orleans a few times before, but I'm not sure it didn't stand out to me the way it did this time around. And that is all the, what do you call these things? Like the shops that sell hurricanes, or what do they call this? I'm blanking on this now. Daiquiris, that's what they call them, daiquiris. So it's, hurricane is just kind of maybe a certain particular flavor or style of daiquiri, whatever, the famous drink that's down there. So they have these daiquiri shops where they have the different color circular frozen drink things, where you can get like a mango flavored daiquiri. And they have tons of daiquiri shops on Bourbon Street. Tons. And, in all the surrounding areas in the French Quarter. And if I asked you, if you haven't been to New Orleans, and I asked you, hey, what's the perfect food to serve with a daiquiri? What might you come up with? First of all, I don't know, because I don't drink daiquiris ever. I don't know what the perfect food would be, but apparently New Orleans has decided that the perfect food to serve with daiquiris is a slice of pizza. So wherever you go on Bourbon Street and you see signs for daiquiris, you'll walk in there and they're serving slices of pizza, along with the daiquiris, of course. And it works the other way. So if you walk down Bourbon Street and you see like, oh, look, pizza by the slice. Awesome, this is going to be great. And you might walk in and they might have just a small pizza area, pizza by the slice, but the whole back wall will be filled with, 20 different flavors of daiquiris that you can order. I thought this was quite curious. And there seems to be like 4 or 5 different, franchises, brands that sell daiquiris and slices of pizza together. So somehow they figured out that this is a winning combination on Bourbon Street, or for the party that is New Orleans. And maybe I'll start noticing it in other party areas around the world. I'm not sure, but that seems to be a winning combination there. So just felt like I needed to share that with everyone. But anyways, okay, speaking about observations, and by the way, if you're listening new out there, I want to welcome new listeners for the new year here. And if you've been listening all along, I want to welcome back people that have always listened to the podcast. And for those people that have been listening to the kickoff episode the last few years, you'll recognize that usually I've been putting together, a list of my, top reinventions for 21. I think I did an episode on. So I had this kind of listing kind of idea to do a solo episode with. And they have been solo episodes to kick it off. It just kind of want to force myself to kind of grow into a different style of podcasting and just work on getting my act together in that regard, but hopefully sharing more about me and how I think, because I think that helps us all, if you're listening out there, to give you an idea of how someone else is going about reinventing things about their life, or reinventing or dealing with the reinvention of the world that's happening around us, So, but this time around, I'm going to do something different, and just focus on a couple different topics, and that is of curiosity and observation. And so, to get into it, I wanted to talk about a couple friends. I guess what got me thinking about this, like I said, over the last couple of weeks, I was trying to figure out what to talk about here in the episode. But I was just making some observations about a couple friends of mine. That's what really got me thinking harder about curiosity and observation itself. And so, one friend is known him a long time. He's been an entrepreneur. He's been a real inspiration to me over the years. Seeing what he did. 'Cause, when I was in the corporate world, I always admired that he could run his own business and make his own decisions on how to spend his time, etc. The lifestyle that he had, and so he, with his businesses about 8 years ago, the market changed and he was getting burnt out, and he just kind of shut his businesses down. He had a couple things going on, and it was cool, totally understandable. But over the last 8 years of knowing him and seeing what he's up to and observing what's happening with him, he hasn't been able to recreate or do something different to kind of reinvent himself. He's kind of been just sort of coasting in a way. And I think he might even say this about himself, so I'm not, talking behind his back here, or in some regards. He's kind of struggling with reinvention of himself, of his own lifestyle. Took a while to, when you get burnt out, you want to take some time off, right? Dealt with his family more, spent more time with his family, etc. But now his son's in college. He's got an empty nest, but he's still struggling with how to move forward, how to move ahead. And again, just kind of observing, you might think like, well, how would you describe that? And I might describe it as being complacent. I'm not sure it's the right word, but maybe you can understand what I'm trying to get across. Where it's, it doesn't seem like he's that interested in doing something new necessarily, not moving ahead, not doing anything different, too many things different. He's just kind of been stuck in the same rut for a while. So maybe the right word is complacency. I'm not sure it is. Sometimes complacency's got too negative of a connotation about it. Anyways, that's one observation I've been making lately on one friend of mine. Another one is a friend that I just saw when I was in New Orleans. Hadn't seen her for a few years, definitely pre-pandemic most likely. And talking to her, so we're talking about what we've been doing, and things have been going on in each other's lives. And she seems to be in this place where I asked her, "Are you retired yet?" or whatever, and she's like, "Well, no." She's struggling with being able to tell people no. So I think she's tried to kind of basically retire a few times, and people keep pulling her back into projects. And she's not that old, This is sort of, she's in the time where she can choose to work or not. It sounds like, and she's just of the mindset of like, yeah, I'm going to be done with that. I don't want to do anything different. I just want to spend time with my cats and hang out on the beach and whatever, So she's not, interested in taking a new job or learning about, taking a course or challenging herself in any deep ways or anything like that. And if I think about where she's at, though, I feel like there's more contentment there, versus my other friend who doesn't seem contented. Seems like he wants to try to change and do something different, but he's been more complacent. For her, I'm just observing her and thinking about it, and I think there's something about contentment that jives with her. She doesn't seem frustrated or unhappy. She's frustrated that she keeps saying yes to these projects. It's one thing she needs to work on for herself is the ability to say no. So anyways, it got me thinking, just observing, just folks about how people think and my reaction to it, my own reaction to it based on how I think and feel. In terms of, dealing with the world as it's spinning and being interested in reinvention. And I realized that there's something about maybe innately that's been inside me this whole time. There's something about curiosity and observation that I think is really what's the right word? That really drives my interest in reinvention, I guess. Why I'm interested. And what you can maybe do to, if you're interested, if you're out there listening and you're interested, and that's why you're listening, of like, hey, how can I reinvent myself? How can I stimulate that? How can I get myself to not be as complacent? Or I'm content, and is it okay to be content but still be interested in reinvention? Is it okay can you be content and still be curious? These are the questions that was kind of raising up in my mind. And I'm thinking like, yeah, what about me? Am I a little bit out there in terms of like thinking I need to really reinvent myself, even though I feel pretty content, generally speaking? I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life, because hopefully the older you get, the more you learn about yourself, the more you learn about the world, and you figure it out. If you keep getting older and you keep getting more frustrated and you're raging all the time, you're probably not figuring things out. That's my personal opinion. You should be getting happier, but that's another podcast. We'll save that topic for another podcast. But anyway, so what I wanted to do was dig into curiosity and observation. So let me pull up some reference documents here, because I want to dig into this a little bit. So I looked up the definition of curiosity on dictionary.com here on the internet, the World Wide Webbage, and it says, the first line here, it says, a strong desire to know or learn something. A strong desire to know or learn something, inquisitiveness, interest. And I like that, I'm someone who wants to keep learning, so I think that's accurate in terms of the statement. But it goes on to say, like, it has some other things about curiosity. It says, what is curiosity and why is it important? So I thought this was interesting. Curiosity is an important and natural urge to discover and grow as a human being. Curiosity is an important and natural urge to discover and grow as a human being. It makes us learn and survive and create opportunities in life. The benefits of natural curiosity. So, and it has a little quote reference here. Einstein once said, he wasn't extraordinarily smart or talented. He just considered himself very curious. So, I think that's innate. It feels innate in me. It jives with me in terms of being more curious. I think it served me well in terms of why, my career and what the things it's drawn me to in life in terms of science and engineering and what goes along with that. Like I like understanding how things work. That's a curious trait. And I guess as a side benefit, if you're curious, it allows you to grow as a human being. I never really thought of it that way. And that's where this observation comes in about, my friends or people that are, seem stagnant, whatever. It seems somewhat, it's not a fault, or it's not like people talk about things, as positive or negative, or features or bugs in people's personalities or whatever. That's not what it is. It's just, some people have more natural curiosity than others. But it's a thing that can help you grow as a human being. Something that can really help you reinvent yourself or keep learning new things if you have this inkling. I think I have just had it a little bit more naturally in my life all along. And I see the contrast when I talk to other people. And it's always, no pun intended, always curious to me as to why they wouldn't be interested in learning new things, or why they wouldn't be interested in finding out how something works. They're just not as curious in the same regard. And if you're content and okay and happy, who cares? It's okay. It's fine. Everybody's different. Everybody has to be who they are. And that's cool. And maybe that's a better way to be. Maybe, people look at me, or I even look at myself sometimes, as being too restless, or curiosity oftentimes can be a distraction, which I'll get to in a second here, which I didn't realize that people have done some research on these things. So, but in terms of reinvention or thinking about curiosity, why would it be curious to cultivate it? So why cultivating curiosity is so important? And here in this reference source, they had three reasons why cultivating curiosity is important. And they say it helps you make better decisions by updating your model of the world. I really like that. Helps you make better decisions by updating your model of the world. So if you're curious and you try to learn, as when new things come along, and you're open to understanding what they mean, it helps you make better decisions, right? Hey, is there value here for me or not? If I understand what this thing means, I can make a good decision. If I totally shut it out, don't know what it means, how can you make a good decision about it, right? You're just deciding not to even participate. Second one, they say it helps you find new opportunities. I agree with that. Again, if your mind is open, you're curious, you want to keep learning, you'll find new opportunities. And the last one is it makes your life exciting. I don't know if I would have put that one down, but I agree with it in terms of why cultivating curiosity is important. Instead of exciting, I think I might have used the word happier. I think it makes you happier if you're more curious. And when you're learning, I think really the learning aspect, the learning and growing aspect is what makes you happier. If you're not growing or learning anything, I think you get into that complacent territory, and I don't think you're as happy and contented. But here they say exciting. That's whatever. It's fine. Okay, so I think you might understand now, why being curious is important, what it can do for you. And there's maybe even a deeper aspect to curiosity, which I always wondered. And of course, the people that have great minds out there that think about this kind of stuff and that are also big observers, they've also commented on it. So, famously, Albert Einstein has this quote. It says, in regards to this, "I have no special talent. I'm only passionately curious." So, one of the greatest minds of the 20th century, he didn't think he was super special in terms of intelligence. And I guess that's the question out there. Is curiosity more important than intelligence? And for Einstein, I think he might say absolutely. His imagination and his curiosity is what led him to his discoveries. He thought he was okay in terms of, just intellectual horsepower. But if you're not curious and you don't have this sort of need to know and understand, it's probably unlikely you'll make those discoveries, you know. So that's another just curious thing about curiosity. Maybe it's more important than intelligence. Seems to be in some regards. Okay, but having said that, and making the argument for curiosity being important, this is a question I just came up with on my own, and I was thinking about it. Is curiosity an indulgence? So, people that have maybe more time on their hands or that are better off in life, maybe they can afford to be more curious, I guess is the notion I was thinking of. And I thought, or is it a distraction? People can think of being curious as having sort of a shiny object syndrome, or people with ADD. They're curious, but they're all over the map, and they want to do 10 different things. I'm not sure that's the same as being curious, but I think the notion of thinking about the downside of being curious is a good thing to ask. And so, in thinking about that, I stumbled upon this research that, if I can find it, what did I do with it? Okay, I found it. Sorry about that. I must have closed the window or something. Okay, here we go. So, thinking about the downside or the negative side of curiosity, there was an article here that came out, or some research that came out around 2020 during the pandemic. I think people were thinking about the world differently. And it says, unsatisfied curiosity can lead to increased indulgence. So, there's some researchers out there. This study was co-authored by Shailendra Jain, the James D. Curie Professor of Marketing at the University of Washington Foster School of Business. So this is in the marketing niche, and I know there's some research done in the psychological niche. More of that flavor, I guess, looking at the downsides. But in the marketing context here, this professor was looking at what's the downside of curiosity? How does it work? Where do people use it? And I think it's quite obvious when I tell you here, in terms of like TV series using it as cliffhangers, or for stimulation, like carrot for like, here's a luxury package, but we're not going to tell you everything. It's used quite often in marketing in terms of like to pique your curiosity so that you continue to click more, to find out more information, to ask questions. So a good marketing message might tell you some things, but might be a little confusing, and it's trying to hook your curiosity in terms of just get in touch with me if you want to learn more, that kind of thing. And so curiosity in this way can be I guess used against you maybe in some ways, or used to control your behavior. But they've also found that if you do those things, if you stimulate the curiosity in someone, it can actually add to this idea of indulgence, which I find a little bit surprising, I guess. And so they say there's a bodily connection, that what this drives is if you're continually stimulated in this way, that with no satisfaction, that your brain is left wanting, basically, right? Wanting to know the answer, wanting to know that more information, and that it manifests itself in the body as indulgence. It needs to be satisfied. And so they're saying, and again, this was done over the pandemic era here, that people were noticing that maybe they were drinking more, maybe they're going on more vacations, maybe they were eating more rich meals, comfort food, etc., because there was this real physiological reaction to curiosity, and it played itself out as being indulgence. I was like, what? I never would have thought about this in this way, but they're talking about, it can lead to addictions and, like eating too much chocolate, all these kinds of things. I'm like, wow. I never associated that with curiosity, but obviously there's nuances here in terms of thinking about it, whether it's good or bad. But what the reason I, again, just focusing on this, is that it was a curious thing for me to observe, different people in my life and see how they are reacting to their situation, what they're considering themselves. Are they content? Do they feel complacent? And for me, it was the one of the things that I found missing in them, I guess, was this innate, inherent curiosity, for better or for worse. I think in one friend, wasn't a big deal. She's more content. She doesn't need to be curious. That's fine. I think in my other friend who's more complacent, I think there's frustration there, and I was curious as to why he's not more curious. I can't figure it out, really. And other than maybe there's just some natural levels of, your natural curiosity that's out there. But the point is, if you know that these things about yourself, and you know that you feel like you're complacent, and maybe you're content, but even though you're content, you still feel like, yeah, but I'm pretty happy, I'm pretty content with what I'm doing, but I know I need to change. I know I should really learn more about this thing over here. I wish I was more curious. If you ever find yourself telling yourself that, you know what, I wish I was more curious. I wish I had that drive to, download the new app and figure it out, but I just don't, because I'm content. I'm happy where I'm at. Although there's probably some benefit on the other side. So I guess this is where the observation part starts to come in, for me anyways. And so I always describe myself, even though my career was engineering and business and investing, and I do music and all these things, I'm more of a scientist at heart. And so if you think about what scientists do, scientists are observers. To me, that's what it means to be a scientist, is to observe the physical world, observe, data and information about a problem. Of course, you're going to synthesize it and try to figure out how things work, but the observation component is really what's needed. And I think if you are able to concentrate on observation, I think this is one of the key things that can stimulate curiosity. And so I'll give you a really stupid example of how it works for me as I try to observe myself now, because I'm thinking about this just the last few weeks of just having these experiences with my friends. So over the holidays, I was watching more TV, sitting around watching more TV than I normally would, and I was watching, and I don't have cable at home, so while I was in the hotel, hanging out in New Orleans, I was watching CNBC. So I like to watch the business shows to see what's going on with the market and those kind of things. And over the holidays, the markets were closed. And because the markets were closed, they didn't have their normal programming on. And so they filled it up with like paid infomercial kind of stuff. And so this is regular CNBC, but there's no commentators on, there's no talking heads, there's nothing going on. They had like these weird commercials. And so they had this one from Time Life, if you remember Time Life books and magazines. And I think they're famous for having collections of music, like songs of the 50s, the Time Life collection, that kind of stuff. Well, they had this really long, it was long. It was at least probably half hour, maybe an hour long infomercial, basically, about Flip Wilson. So Flip Wilson, the comedian, black comedian from the 70s. I remember when I was a kid, I loved watching Flip Wilson. He's awesome. And he had a great TV show. So he had one of the early variety shows that was really a big hit. And he had a lot of cool musicians, and even he had jazz people on there, which I was, like there's very few opportunities for the musicians that I like to show up in general culture and pop culture and on TV, and certainly at that time. So it was cool. I love watching his show. And so they had this, infomercial on about Flip Wilson, and so I got just hooked because I was interested in like, oh yeah, Flip Wilson, I remember him. And I remember all the things he did on his show. It was pretty cool. But I was observing. I wasn't just consuming the content. I was thinking like, what's going on here with CNBC? What day is it? Why is this on? Why is their regular programming not on? So I kind of figured that part out, right? Oh, it's the holidays. I get it. Why? All right. So I got past that, and then I'm thinking like, okay, but why is this on? Why is Time Life on? Why is Flip Wilson on? And what the offer was you could buy, like his whole catalog, whatever, on DVD. On DVD. I'm thinking like, who still buys DVDs? It's, there's no streaming option or whatever. So I started just looking at it a little bit harder. And I even went to I even searched it online because I'm looking at this thing. I'm like, I'm going to go to their website and see what else they're doing. I'm going to see what Time Life is doing. I mean, maybe this is crazy, okay, to most people out there. But observing it a little bit harder, a little bit more specifically, got my curiosity going, right? I'm like, wait, why is this the way it is? What's really going on here? And so if you start thinking about it like, okay, well, the demographic people that are watching CNBC maybe are a little bit older, maybe they have a little bit more money, that's why they're more interested in the market because they're investors and all those kind of things. And, that older demographic are obviously now the people that remember DVDs or use DVDs, have experience with DVDs. Maybe they all still have DVD players. And I just kept thinking like, man, this is a wild media buy for Time Life to want to have their commercial on CNBC in the afternoon on like New Year's Day. I mean, it was pretty interesting where they were seeing value basically. So Time Life saw, hey, this is valuable for us to be in front of this audience at this time. And I just thought the offer was crazy because it only comes on DVD. There's no streaming option. There's no other digital option whatsoever. Looking at their website, they only sell DVDs, Time Life. Like they haven't renewed that concept or brought it into the more modern era. That's quite a curiosity, too. Anyways, I know, a stupid reference, a stupid story, but I guess to demonstrate whatever you're seeing out there, whatever you're looking at, you can always be a more tuned-in observer of. And the more you tune into it as an observer, I think that's where the curiosity starts to pop up, right? If you're not just a consumer, which is fine too, but if you're more of an observer, a dispassionate observer, where you're just trying to figure out what's going on there, I think that's where curiosity comes from. And that's where it comes from for me, I believe. And that's why I sort of always describe myself as more of a scientist at heart. I'm just interested in observing and trying to put two and two together. And if you do that, I think wherever you're at, if you're complacent and feel like you need to change and are not sure how, maybe think about observing more. Think about more about what you're curious about. What are you fundamentally really curious about? What do you want to know more about? What do you like looking at? Maybe you could just look at the stuff that you've always dealt with in a consumption way, but maybe look at it as in a way where you can observe it. Really observe it differently. That might lead to some interesting things for you. And if you're content, and again, still thinking you might want to change or still think you need to reinvent something, but you're totally content, you're like, you're not super driven, again, try some observation. Get some more observation into your life. And for me, I feel like I'm pretty content, pretty happy with what's going on, the path I'm on, the direction I'm on, but I'm still super curious. So I think curiosity and contentment definitely can go together. I think complacency and curiosity, I don't think they can go together. I think if you get super curious, you're no longer complacent, and vice versa. So I don't know how you would think about that or answer that for yourself, but that's my feeling about it. And I've got to these places by observing my own behavior and observing behavior of, most recently, of these couple of friends I mentioned earlier. But I've thought about it a long time, also. So, anyways, I hope that helps you in terms of kicking off the new year. Maybe you can think about more intentionally observing the world, observing yourself, and fostering your own curiosity. And I'm telling you, if that happens, the reinvention part will start to be taking care of itself. But again, if you need to, prime your mind and figure out how to disrupt those patterns and get going, remember you can always go to the website, JimJim'sReinventionRevolution.com, download the priming guide, 7 simple ways to prime your mind for reinvention. And maybe you should just get curious about it if you haven't downloaded it, right? Explore. And I don't send out a lot of emails, so if you're worried about downloading it and being on an email blast list, that's not what I do. That's really just the content is there for you. You'll get a email of the digital download, and then you'll get notifications when the new episodes get released. So check that out. Remember, you can go to my Linktree, /JimJim99, I think it is, and find all my links there. You can go to the Ko-Fi, buy me a coffee, show your love for the podcast. Share this episode with someone. It's a new year, so try new things. It's a new year. Now's the time. As Charlie Parker would say, now's the time. Now's the time. If you don't know the name of that song, or you don't know what that song is by Charlie Parker, go look it up. Search it on YouTube. Get curious about it, okay? All right. That's all I got for you right now. I got to get moving because I got gigs this weekend and probably going back to Asia at the end of January here. So catch up with you soon. Bye. Thank you for listening to JimJim's Reinvention Revolution podcast. If you want to hear more, join our mailing list at JimJim'sReinventionRevolution.com. See you next time. And remember, the revolution has just begun. So dig in, embrace the process of reinvention, and start realizing the success you've always dreamed of. Hey, revolutionaries, if you enjoyed today's episode and today's guest, let them know by commenting on their Facebook page, finding their Twitter handle or Instagram feed, and letting them know you heard them on JimJim's Reinvention Revolution podcast, and tell them what you got out of the episode, what you really liked, or how they inspired you. I know they would get a kick out of it, and will help others find the same value that you found.